Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, gaming historian David G. Schwartz joins us here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers. Big R in Sparks is located on Bering Boulevard next to Smith's and across from Reed High School. It's a 50,000 square foot hardware store and a whole lot more. It's your spring headquarters with lawn and garden supplies, power equipment, and outdoor living. Big R on Bering Boulevard in Sparks next to Smith's and across from Reed High School. Big R, hardware and a whole lot more.
Carson Valley Inn, it's your place for the good times. Carson Valley Inn.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
For 50 years, Nevada Heating has been keeping people comfortable in their homes. At Nevada Heating, call the Do It Right guys and get the air conditioning back on today. That's the Nevada Heating way. Why sweat for days on end when Nevada Heating can get your air conditioning fixed today? Call us today and we'll fix it today at 323-5585 or schedule us on our website at nevadaheating.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, come to you from the Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas. We're joined by David G. Schwartz. He is a gaming historian and author of many great books, including Grandissimo. We can get to that a little bit later. That was one of my favorites. I want to have just kind of what I think is going to be a very interesting discussion, which is Las Vegas past, present, and future. So let's start with the past, because you know, you explored that in Grandissimo with Jay Sarno, who was creator of Caesar's Palace and also Circus Circus. Tell us about the Las Vegas of his day.
The Las Vegas of his day was, in some ways, more entrepreneurial, much more personal, much more smaller town. And I think he really seized in that. And I think if he had come 5 years earlier or 5 years later, it might not have worked, but he came at just the exact right time when they were looking for a project like that and where he would have that freedom to really go after it.
Well, and these were, for their time, crazy buildings. I mean, nobody had ever seen things like this. It was more like a bacchanal.
They are. I mean, what I love about it is you have so many levels of this. So you've got on one hand that architectural, artistic element with the theming and stuff. On the other hand, you've got Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters financing half the place. You've got all kinds of other stuff going on in that realm. So it's kind of, to me, it's a microcosm of that era of Vegas.
Why do you think that died out? Why do you think that faded away?
It really wasn't going to be sustainable. You know, either Las Vegas was going to grow to the next step or it wasn't. And it's interesting, so Caesars opens August 5th, 1966. In November of 1966, who comes to Las Vegas but Howard Hughes? So you have kind of the last of the old order and then the arrival of the new order right on top of each other. And I think that's really symbolic in so many ways.
And Howard Hughes came in with such an interesting attitude. He was just buying up, because he had all the money, he was buying up properties like crazy, to the point where the governor at the time, even in Reno, governor at the time said, stop, you can't buy any more properties, right?
Yeah, I mean, he really had the idea, you know, he was kind of the original gigantic fish in a small pond. He'd lived in LA, he'd lived in Boston briefly. He wanted some place where people would leave him alone while he was able to control a lot of the city, and that's what he was really aiming to do.
Was he as bizarre as he's made out to be?
Most accounts would tend to say yes. You know, definitely Robert Mayhew wrote a pretty good memoir about working with him, and you know, and I think we can take what he said at face value, and yeah, like a lot of that stuff would make you question what he was doing.
Kirk Kerkorian was of always great interest to me because it seemed like he bridged from the mafia days into more of the modern era.
He really did, and Kerkorian is somebody who I think doesn't always get his due because he doesn't have, Jay Sarno's pizzazz. He doesn't have, Howard Hughes as Howard Hughes, that mystique. He was somebody who came to Las Vegas, invested wisely, built some huge hotels, and really did lay the groundwork for what Las Vegas became.
Well, he also, as an entrepreneur, one of his entrepreneurial efforts was this flight service, and he was the guy that flew Bugsy Siegel on his last flight to LA.
Yeah. So he had that long history with the city, but I think importantly, Kirk Kerkorian, what I'm struck by him is his humility in so many ways, and he didn't come to Las Vegas like a Howard Hughes and say, well, there's nothing here, which I feel like a lot of people do that in the United States, especially in the Western United States, especially where we're surrounded by a desert. They say, well, here's this blank canvas. I'm going to impose my will on it. Kirk Kerkorian didn't do that. He studied it. His first investment in the New Frontier didn't pan out. And he said, well, I learned from that. Next time I'm going to run it. He then leases the land for Caesar's Palace to Jay Sarno, sees how much money Jay is making, and Jay had some unorthodox business strategies and partners, and said,
to say the least.
He said, this works, I could do this better, hires the right people and lets them do their job.
Well, one of the quotes that I liked that was in the book that came out about Kerkorian by the former one of the editors at the LA Times a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And he said that Kerkorian liked to stand at the back of the room. He didn't want to be the front man. But he wasn't like Howard Hughes, where he hid himself away. He was a very sociable person. He played tennis with people on a regular basis. He went to dinners with people on a regular basis. I know from people in Reno, when he opened the MGM in Reno, that he would come around and talk to the department heads and say, what do you need? What can I do to help? He wasn't isolated in that manner. And so it was by choice he wasn't the front man, correct?
Yeah, and his idea was he has the money, he can invest, but he lets the experts do their thing. And he hasn't run a 2,000-room hotel before, so he'll let them do that. Certainly in gaming, that's a business where a lot of people have lost a lot of money because they thought they knew better than the people they hired. He never fell prey to that.
And he built the 3 largest hotels in the world at that time, right?
He did, yeah.
And he also got the biggest stars in the world to open those properties. Barbra Streisand opened every one of those properties.
Yeah. So he had that knack for, and again, a lot of it's getting the right people and then, taking advantage when you have these opportunities.
I thought that, going from the International Hotel, which is now Westgate, but was the Las Vegas Hilton under its, I think, most famous name, and then to what is now, now it's now the Horseshoe, but was Bally's, and then the MGM, that is the 5,005-room hotel that is still a stunning property. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back, and that deals with some of the past. Obviously, we could go on for days about the past.
Oh, of course.
But let's move on to the present and this little journey of ours. We'll be right back.
Remember 2010 in northern Nevada, 13 to 14% unemployment, thousands of homes in foreclosure, Nevada's casinos closing? Families in the Reno-Sparks area were hurting. Many were losing everything. Then Story County launched a game changer for our region, a public-private industrial partnership, streamlined permitting, slashed bureaucracy, attracting Fortune 500 companies that made Nevada their home. Story County generated a river of cash to area communities. Economic studies by the state and others for the Gigafactory consistently show positive economic benefits for our region. $4 billion in local wages, $17 billion in consumer spending and economic activity, over $100 million in taxes to Washoe, Story, Reno, Sparks, and Nevada, just for the Gigafactory alone. Story County, improving northern Nevada one industry at a time.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Hi, I'm Renee Summerhour, digital news anchor here at 7 at 7. Watch our streaming nonstop newscast immediately with your mobile phone. 7 at 7 is the new way for you to get every bit of local news you need in just 7 minutes. Breaking news, local neighborhood news, weather, and sports are just a click away. Reporters bring you all of what's happening in the Valley. From Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, YouTube, and more. Get every bit of local news you need from the RJ and LVRJ.com.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
Southwest Specialties has been making the homes and businesses of Nevada beautiful for more than 20 years. Their experienced designers and craftsmen create the walkways, backyards, water features, and a variety of outdoor cooking areas that add curb appeal and value to your investment. Call today or visit them at their website and see how they can make your outdoor spaces special. Southwest Specialties, creative, distinctive, beautiful.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers here at the Ahern Hotel, we continue our conversation with David G. Schwartz. He's a gaming historian, worked for many years at UNLV, written tons of books. So we're taking our journey now to the modern era, and I'm presuming that one starts the modern era with Steve Wynn, and even before Mirage, you'd have to say what he did with the Golden Nugget, wouldn't you?
It starts with the Golden Nugget. You know, there's this huge shift that happens in Las Vegas in the early 80s, before the Mirage and everything, where there was a recession, the high roller supply dried up, some casinos didn't make it through, they really struggled. They then turned to the mass market and said, you know, they're not spending a lot of money, but there's a lot of them.
Right.
You know, that starts the family-friendly stuff too. Then Steve Wynn comes with the Mirage and says, well, we'll take this and we'll move it up a level. And this upper middle class family market is where it's at with Mirage and then Treasure Island. You know, then later in the 90s, the Bellagio comes and say, well, let's go full on luxury. So I find there's that evolution there that really goes back to that crisis in the early 80s and the turn to the mass market.
And it was an incredibly ballsy move to open these properties, as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they said that it was going to take $1 million a day in revenue for the Mirage. It was going to take $2 million a day in revenue for Treasure Island and $3 million a day for Bellagio, and nobody thought that he could achieve any of those goals.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought that he was going to go bankrupt, that Mirage wasn't going to work. And, you know, there's always skeptics. People always have questions. But I think what it comes down to, and the other thing that I find interesting is sometimes people say, well, Las Vegas was so unsuccessful, Steve Wynn had to come and rescue it. That's actually not the case. They were, and, you know, if you look back at what was going on there, they were actually doing very well with quarter slot players, with the convention business, with stuff like that. Because they were doing well, people weren't willing to take risks. So he came in, as he put it, he built a $600 million resort in a $200 million town. You know, people said, well, no, it'll never sustain that, and why not just open up another place with the convention business and the quarter slot players? And he proved them wrong.
E. Thomas Perry,
yeah.
and the effect he had. Who was he, and what was the effect he had on the town?
Perry Thomas, again, is one of these people who had an enormous impact on Las Vegas. Of course, his name is part of the Thomas and Mack Center at UNLV, so we'll never forget him. You know, he was the person who opened up mainstream finance to the casino industry. Back in the 50s, bankers and insurance companies didn't want to loan money to casinos for good reason, because they're very risky businesses. It wasn't a moral thing, it was just looking at the numbers. Perry Thomas saw, well, no, there's some money to be made in this, and this will help grow the community. So he really embraced that.
And in those days, conventions were not considered to be a particularly good thing, either in Las Vegas or Reno. Conventioneers were taking the space of gamblers. They didn't gamble, they didn't eat, they just went to the conventions, and it wasn't good business. And then Sheldon Adelson came along, and had a whole different approach. Share with us what the approach was.
Yeah, I covered this a little bit in my most recent book, At the Sands, which was about the Sands Hotel, which Sheldon Adelson bought. And really, my favorite quote is when the day that he bought the Sands, the news article had another casino owner say, "I'm glad he bought a casino. Now he can see how awful his conventions are," because Sheldon Adelson had brought the Comdex convention in Las Vegas. That was the mentality. And his idea was, you know what? So maybe you'll let some of your dealers take off early at night, but you're going to make a lot more money in the food and beverage and in the hotel rooms. And this is a solid business, especially when you don't have all the high rollers coming in the middle of the week. So he really, there was a lot of skepticism. I feel like you could do a whole book of just the skeptics in Vegas and how they were proven wrong many times.
Well, and when he sold Comdex, it was for what, $750 million, right?
For a lot of money.
Which gave him the ability, because the Sands at that point, from the Rat Pack era, where it was the hottest place in town, had fallen into disrepute. I remember going there, somebody gave me a comp to a show there, and I was like, this is the famous Sands? It was horrible. And then he comes up with this idea of an all-suite property, and he's going to build 3,000 rooms, and everybody laughed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting for the Sands, because for the last 20 years or so of its existence, it was always, okay, we're going to build a new tower next year, we're going to do this next year, and they never really got there. When they finally had an owner who had the money to do it, it's like, well, we'll just start from scratch. That makes more sense. So it's kind of interesting how the Sands, if things had happened differently, if they'd added 1,000 rooms in the 70s, Sands might still be there, but they didn't. So instead we get the Venetian and Palazzo.
Well, I remember people laughing at Sheldon Adelson's ideas of, first of all, a 3,000 all-suite hotel. Then he said, after that was, well on the way, that he was going to build another 3,000 rooms, and everybody really laughed at that, because how are you going to deal with 6,000 rooms? And then he was forced to build 1,000 rooms in between those two 3,000s to accommodate the growth.
Yeah.
What happened there?
I think what happened there is he just came in, and again, he also trusted his team. He had a good team working with him. And, let's not just do what happened before. Let's not build on that. Let's try something different. And it worked. Another thing that he was known for more then than today is that he never had a buffet. And
right.
He really, and again, people said, how can you have a casino without a buffet? He's like, nope, we don't want a buffet. So it's amazing how that worked for him.
I'll touch on something that I hadn't actually planned to touch on until you brought that up. But, in addition to the fact that buffets were always lost leaders, and in a lot of places they've either gone away or become incredibly expensive. Mm-hmm. In Reno, the Grand Buffet at the Atlantis was $89 for Mother's Day, which was higher than any price in Las Vegas.
Wow.
And the place, as always, was packed. And so it seems like buffets have now become a high-end deal rather than a low-end deal. Am I right about that?
It's fascinating too, and this started out with the El Rancho Vegas back in the 40s, the first casino on what became the Strip, with their Chuck Wagon buffet, which was literally cold cuts. And obviously now we've gone way beyond that. So, and I think that's kind of what's happened to the casino industry in Nevada, is it's become more upscale in a lot of ways because you've had so much regional competition around the country.
All right, so that brings me to the bigger point, which is coming to Las Vegas now is a very expensive proposition no matter where you stay, especially if there's an event. Motel 6 is charging $200 a night. I'm throwing out a number there, but I mean, the point is it's not an inexpensive place. One of the heads of Caesars was on a conference call with the gaming analysts a couple of weeks ago and said that, we're going to lose the lower end, I'm paraphrasing, but the lower end of the business because it's going to be all, upper end. What does that bode for Vegas?
Well, it's definitely a shift. And again, like, this works until it doesn't. And we've seen that historically. Back in the 70s, they thought they were doing great with that upper end. Economy change, shift to the lower end, and then build it back. And now the pendulum is swung in the other direction. So I feel like what's made Las Vegas so successful historically is having something for everybody, where you've got stuff at every different price points. And when you get away from that, I feel it can be more lucrative, but it's also more fragile.
A very good point. And then you end up, when you're in a downturn, of that room you were selling for $500 a night, you're now selling for $50 a night to get it cleared out. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and let's look at the future. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this time out.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management offers workers' comp services to a growing number of industries. As businesses grow and change with the times, the need for a solid workers' comp program must be flexible and up to date. The evolving nature of regulations can make staying ahead of complex tasks challenging. But Pro Group Management simplifies the work so your industry can move forward and succeed. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Truck drivers are some of the hardest working people you'll meet, delivering over 70% of America's freight and 92% of Nevada's. When there's a natural disaster, they're delivering critical supplies to help those communities recover and rebuild. Every sector of the economy and our nation's military rely on truck drivers. So let's take a moment to say thank you. On the open road or city streets, our truck drivers are rolling to make our economy and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
What do you count on? You count on your power every day. At NV Energy, we've always powered what's important to you, but we're not looking at the past. We're focused on the future. While our standards are high, our rates will remain low. And our commitment to renewables isn't just meeting standards, but leading the way. Because you can count on more than just your power. You can count on the company who brings it to you. That's our promise. You can count on it.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with David G. Schwartz. He is a gaming historian connected to UNLV for many years, written many, many books on the gaming industry. So we've gone into the past, we've gone into where we are currently. As you look at what's on the table now and what we're seeing with sports, but so many other things, where do you envision we're seeing things go in the future?
I mean, there's so many variables, it's hard to say. You know, if the trends continue the way they've been going, we'll see less of a focus on gambling and tourism. You know, tourism will still be there, it'll be less gambling focused, and hopefully we'll see some more diversification around the valley because, you know, Las Vegas has become a huge metropolis, and you're not going to always support that just on the tourism.
Okay, so I get the gaming part. I'm not sure I get the tourism part because you can gamble anywhere.
Yeah.
And because of the cost of things as they are currently, you're going to spend way more money on going to dinner and a show than you would have done in a gambling budget, which might have been $200 or $300, but now you're spending, you know, $600 or $700 just to go and have a dinner and go and see a show. But you've got right now you've got 150,000 hotel rooms. And you've got many more hotel rooms on the ground. Mm-hmm. Fontainebleau's going to open up with almost 4,000 rooms. You've got Resorts World planned. In the original, they said that they were going to be 7,000 rooms. They got 3,000 so far. Mm-hmm. You've got all these other projects that are going on the south end of the Strip. You've got the A's. Why do you not see that as, you know, a tourism destination?
It definitely, I think the tourism is there. It's not necessarily going to be the gaming, but the tourism is there. But of course, it's always important to build it even broader. You know, if you look at other towns like my hometown, Atlantic City, great tourist destination until it wasn't, and hasn't really found itself yet. I still have faith that it will.
You know, gaming never really did what they were hoping it would do, which was to reinvigorate the entire town. It reinvigorated the area of the boardwalk, but it didn't invigorate the town.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue there was that the casino owners were making so much money doing what they were doing. Nobody had the vision like they did in Las Vegas to move beyond into the non-gaming stuff. You know, there's a huge part of the country's population lives within a drive there. You know, I still think it could be a great destination for a lot of things beyond just the gambling. And I think lately they have moved in that direction. There's a lot more non-gaming stuff to do in Atlantic City than there used to be.
Right.
So I think that the idea for Las Vegas has never been complacent. And I got very worried when people say, well, yeah, look at how many people are coming here. Great. How many people are going to come here next year? That's what we should be worried about.
And how big a role do you think technology is going to play? And you know, because we still have slot machines that are basically not altered in function for decades. It seems like we need to move all of this into a much more technological era.
I think so. You know, people have pretty much always gambled. If you look at history, they've always gambled.
Course.
But they haven't always gambled in the same thing. You know, a game called Faro,
right,
150 years ago was the game that won the West, was the most popular game. Nobody plays it today, at least not too many people.
Right.
You know, so yeah, 50 years from now, people will still be gambling. Are they going to be sitting in a big air-conditioned room and putting coins, putting dollars into a machine and pressing buttons? Maybe not. They could be doing something else. So I think it's also having the just vision to say, well, what else could we offer for people?
Are you surprised that esports has been so slow to take off?
Not really, because it's hard to do in a gaming environment because people can do it so easily from home. There's a whole infrastructure built up in other areas, you know, and I think the betting on esports is something, but again, that'll be a fraction of a bigger whole. I think it'll get there eventually. If you look at how people playing sports have evolved, they started from running, that kind of stuff, to then bats and balls and things like that. So it seems like using games is the next step.
Well, you know, it's funny because we've seen this evolution in so many different ways in terms of technology, and millions of people watch esports online. And my thought is, you put the best players in the world in a convention center. You know, Ben Kiekeffer, the governor's current chief of staff, said that you put in an esports tournament at Allegiant Stadium, you'll fill every other convention center around. I think that may be part of the pathway to the future.
I think so too. And you know, the key is not necessarily the gambling aspect, but the tourism aspect. Like you said before, we've got a great infrastructure here. We can bring people here from around the world. They can get here pretty easily. Let's focus on that, bringing in the esports.
I thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please come back and we can have more conversations.
I'd love to.
And thank you, and we'll be right back.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
Calamity. It lurks around every corner. Or not. That's why UMC Quick Care is around every corner, with locations around the valley. UMC Quick Care, for all your small calamities.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Event Center sits at the heart of the Las Vegas Strip. 2 floors of meeting and event space are ideal for groups and conventions. Stay in one of 200 luxurious rooms and suites. Brand your event throughout the property. Flexible event spaces make for easy planning and personalization. Take over the entire hotel with a full buyout option.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from the Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas. We'll see you on the next broadcast.